Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Thank you for staying with us. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Starting with, as we told you from the top, the 2025 Appropriation Bill, which was this week presented before members of the National Assembly by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, successfully passed its second reading in the National Assembly. This is following an extensive debate by legislators on Thursday with mixed reactions from lawmakers. Arise correspondent Adesuwa Giwa-Osage reports.
The 2025 Appropriation Bill passed its second reading in the House of Representatives on Thursday after a spirited debate amongst lawmakers. While some praised the bill's vision, others called for closer scrutiny. Minority Leader Kingsley Chinda criticized the projected reduction of inflation from 34.6% to 15%, labeling it as ambitious and unrealistic.
I don't see how we can achieve that. Even where we achieved the issues of security in 2025, does it follow that immediately the same year that we'll also achieve food security? The answer is completely no. If we achieve security in 2025, we expect fundamental improvement in food security perhaps the following year. But to continue to budget that we are going to achieve security for the country this 2025 and the same 2025 that we're also going to achieve food security is self-deceit.
However, Honorable Kafilat Ogbara disagreed, defending the projection as achievable with the right policies.
And some have said that this budget is too ambitious or that it can trigger inflation. But this is a budget that clearly states its target of inflation reduction from 34% to 15%. So clearly this budget will be, working on its inflation rates for the nation. And of course, I also want to say that this budget also highlights its key economic goals, which will be stimulating growth, ensuring that infrastructure is more enhanced, and of course to ensure that it promotes social welfare.
Honorable Bello El-Rufai raised concerns about ballooning recurrent expenditures, urging lawmakers to curb excesses and prioritize fiscal discipline.
So the recurrent issue is in every budget, even a young person like myself. We budget for vehicles every year. We budget for utensils every year. So what I would like us to do, sir, to open more revenues or block loopholes, is to look at all these ministries that are bringing their budgets. If they bought vehicles last year, please, they should just relax now. Vehicles do not expire. These are the little things, Mr. Speaker, that unless we start looking at them, the loopholes we talk about will not come out. I want to thank the leadership for sessions like this and other experienced members. It's a learning opportunity. But on this, the Oronsai report, sir, should be implemented. It is key. That is one. The second and most important thing to me, since I was I'm still a young man, since I was a boy, budgets every year come with new computers, new furniture. These things don't expire, sir. We should cut them out totally. We can't be asking Nigerians. We can't have a tax reform bill that could shape the fiscal shape of this country. Well, as leaders, we are not cutting anything. So I urge the chairman, I'm honored, sir, that I chair a committee that has CBN, but my budget is not on here. But committee chairman that are more experienced than myself should look into this. Nigerians are tired of every agency buying fork and knife every year. We should show them we are serious.
As the bill advances, these debates underscore the critical need for balance between ambition and pragmatism in shaping Nigeria's economic future. Adesuwa Giwa-Osage, Arise News, Abuja.
All right, interesting one there. It has passed the second reading in the House of Reps. A lot of people think that it might even go a lot faster when it gets to the Senate, given the chummy relationship that the federal lawmakers at the upper chamber, have with the president, given, the song that they led when he went to present the budget, on his mandate.
They might be re-elected.
No, but of course, I hope that they got the jocular nature in which the president, said that thing, even though it might be a bit prophetic for many of them. And of course, I like the way that the president came back, from 11th Assembly to 10th Assembly, to correct himself, using, accepting the blame rather than shifting it to those who misled the president, who prepared the speech of the president in terms of that gaffe. So it looks to me like what is important is not how fast this budget will be passed. Of course, it will be passed. I don't see anything that will stop any major discussion points other than what a few members of the opposition have raised, including even Bello, who's in the APC, on the floor of the House about the practicability, and the reality of that budget. It's an ambitious budget, no doubt, at almost 50 trillion, 49.7 trillion, a whole lot more than what, this is the second full budget of the administration, and a whole lot more than the deal last December, which we are now operating. So if you look at the budget in itself, you say that it looks like there's adequate concern for the important sectors of the economy in Naira terms. So you are talking in terms of security at 4.something trillion. First time ever that it will be that much, almost 10%, actually, 8 or 9% of the entire budget size, followed, of course, by infrastructure. So if people are saying that how does the president want to work out the details in terms of revamping the economy, he's saying that all that you have been asking for is that if we are fully secure and then there is enough money for infrastructure, we will have started rebuilding in a proper way. And so you can see the sense in which the president has voted a good chunk of the money into security and infrastructure, followed, of course, by education and health. And again, this is also very important on Naira terms. But there are two major issues. First will be how realistic are the projections, given the fact that even though, this is big in terms of Naira, it's still a very small, budget size in terms of the reality of our current exchange to the dollar. Even smaller in size to the current budget that we are running, that the president, passed, that the National Assembly passed into law earlier this year, the budget, 2020, 2024. Given, of course, that the Naira has been badly devalued. Yeah. If you take it for that, you see that when we say that we have lost the number one position of Nigeria to South Africa, and then Egypt coming behind South Africa, and then Algeria coming behind them before Nigeria. This budget, again, in terms of a dollar size, has shown that we are not anywhere number one in Africa at this time. All those three other economies are still, running bigger economies, bigger budgets than us. And given the fact that our population is almost the total of those three countries together, so, living standards and conditions, you can imagine why we're still a bit of the poverty capital of the world. The other concern, of course, will be the assumption that inflation will be reduced, will come down from 34 point something to about 15%. Well, the president's men are saying that if security is in place and then you have voted sufficient money for infrastructure and then education and health are doing well, and that you may be able to curb inflation. I doubt if we can go this far. Any appreciable gain will be welcome, but it doesn't look like that's how we're able to proceed. So for me, cautious optimism, but I see the effort that has been put into it. The only other thing will be then that is to scrutinize the details, what we are spending money on, and I think that's what Bello Rufai referred to when you have agencies and parastatals, always buying cars, buying tires,
buying
budgeting for utensils,
utensils.
and things like that. Those are the areas where we will need to, tighten the budget.
Yeah, I agree with you, 100%. And like you've rightfully said, when we look at the sectoral allocations, defense and security is the highest there. We're seeing infrastructure there, of course, at 4.6 trillion, education at 3.52, and health, of course, at 2.48 trillion. But one thing that a lot of people are not talking about is the fact that the debt servicing, when we look at this particular budget, is 15.81 trillion. It's almost 33% of the budget that is going towards servicing existing debts, and of course, highlighting the fiscal constraints that we have. There have been key indicators, used to frame the budget. We're looking at the oil production of about 2.06 million barrels per day, and then the exchange rate that they're looking
will that
exactly
be?
We're looking at the exchange rate
at
doing
less than 1.6 million as of December.
Exactly. And then like you mentioned rightfully, the inflation, the projected to drop from 34.6 to 15%. How realistic? How are we going to be able to achieve these things? And then when we also talk about the challenges and risks to this budget, like I was talking about earlier, the high budget deficits. When we're looking at 13.08 trillion it raises concerns about borrowing and its impact on our debt sustainability on the long run. And when we look at these ambitious projections about the revenue generation as well, and the inflation data and the exchange rates, it still feels as if we are leaving such a huge gap to be unaccounted for. But another thing that also stood out to me, one thing that stood out to me rather, was the fact that there's no subsidy payment in this budget. So at least we can say now that, okay, we're not paying subsidy. However, we're looking at, it used to be about $10 to $15 billion that used to go to see allocated to that, and that's completely gone. But how exactly is it being repurposed back into the budget for the growth and development of the country?
How do you repurpose the money that does not exist?
It
doesn't exist. There's no, you can't repurpose.
But it then speaks to the subject of productivity and being able to diversify the economy. We're still looking at employment rates at 4%, about 200 million Nigerians, half of the population living below the poverty line. So how exactly are we going to match up that revenue generation? If we're looking at all the other factors, we're still a bit wary about it, and then we're not necessarily looking at how to empower the Nigerian people. So,
I'm not sure about employment being 4%. That's what the MBS says. But,
yes.
But of course, they change the parameters. Most people would think that our unemployment rate using, the standard parameters that everybody knows will be anything around 33, to 37%. But then if you say that anybody who has done in 1 year, an hour of work, whether it makes money or not from it, that's their description of why we're at 4 point. But that would be delusional. We will be deceiving ourselves if we think that is the reality of Nigeria. You can't have unemployment at 4% when you are the poverty capital of the world. So again, but that there are so many things happening with the MBS, given what they are giving out,
statistics that they've given us.
And the government doesn't like it. Another government agency goes there to pick up, the end of the page and says, why are you releasing this type of a thing?
I mean, I would say this, President Tinubu has tagged it as the 2025 restoration budget. It's an ambitious and optimistic plan to stabilize Nigeria's economy, to enhance security and rebuild critical infrastructure. But while the intentions are commendable, success will depend on the realistic revenue generation, efficient policy execution, and prioritizing citizens' welfare over political interest. We have a lot of significant challenges ahead, and it underscores the need for transparency and, like you said, a line-by-line item of how this money is being spent.
Are not needed, are wasteful. I believe that if we scrutinize very well, maybe the process of transformation that the president has in mind can truly begin. But the biggest worry will be the fact that, yes, this budget will be passed in January. When does it start operating? Because the National Assembly has said that the 2024 budget is still running and will run till June. That's not tidy. That is not how things are done properly. I thought that we had left that relic of, misappropriation, if you like, to the time of Muhammadu Buhari. But it looks like the National Assembly, which is still largely, from that Ninth Assembly, are saying that they can just, be spending money out. It won't happen in the corporate sector. It won't happen in any decent country if you're not disciplined enough to pass your budget at the right time and then spend it within the 12 month cycle. And then there's something wrong in the manner in which you are operating it. And then it could suggest that those who are advocating for this shenanigan direct or indirect beneficiaries of the shenanigan. And that's not tidy. That's one key area that the president will need to look into.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, then. We'll proceed to a story that is of interest to me. And that's, the Oyo State government in southwest Nigeria has constituted a panel of inquiry to investigate the immediate and remote causes of a stampede at Islamic High School, Basharun, in Ibadan, which left an unspecified number of residents dead with many injured. Deputy Governor Bayo Lawal disclosed this when he visited medical facilities where the victims are currently receiving treatment. Our Rice News correspondent Olutayo Famous Cole sent in the following report.
It's one sad incident which has left in its wake tales of sorrow, regrets and misery for relatives of victims who have lost their loved ones in this midnight stampede, which many are described as avoidable. The organizers had announced that food and cash donations will be distributed to about 5,000 beneficiaries, but unfortunately, the number that showed up doubled that figure. This resulted in a stampede affecting mostly children. This sad event once again brings to the fore the high level of poverty and poor planning. The state deputy governor has visited the injured at facilities where they are receiving treatment.
And from immediate inquiries that I have made, the security agencies said they were not contacted. That queen should turn in herself to the police immediately. And then the radio station, proprietor of that radio station, should also turn in himself.
While lack of planning and proper coordination has been blamed for this ugly incident, concerned Nigerians have called on government at all levels to tackle hunger, starvation and poverty. Olutayo Famous Cole, Arise News, Ibadan.
All right, Shaito, this is very sad, and our condolences, go to the family, first to the Oyo State government and of course to the people of the state, and specifically to the families of those who have lost their loved ones. Our report says that the figures are yet to be finally determined, but we know that it will be anything from 30 to 35 has been reported. Innocent kids, victims of our current situation, lost needlessly, by poor planning, and of course as a result of poverty, as our story highlighted. I think that this issue is very important to everybody concerned. It sends strong messages to practically everybody, to government, to individuals, particularly those who think that anybody can form an NGO and then you can just assemble people, assemble children, anyhow, in the name of funfair. And this is not to condemn the funfair, the Christmas funfair, the intention behind it, that the former Olori, the former queen of Onirisha, Jaja, was trying to do. But I think that the lesson has to be learned. And even if it has to be learned the hard way, that you just don't arrogate to yourself the competence that you do not have. And I think that was what was on display in Ibadan when you announce on social media, announce on radio, and then gather people without adequate preparation, without the ability to look after people. And I think that somebody, will have to be taught some lesson. We're talking in terms of the chief organizers. We're talking in terms of the collaborators, even if they're a media, institution. And this is a lesson to media houses who claim to be media partners to ideas that they are not really directly part of. You do not have an idea of how security will be, of how safety will be, of how logistics will be. And then you say that you are a media partner, to something. And then to the school itself, that allowed that to happen. Once you saw that this is looking like something that we will not be able to control, it is the duty of the school authorities and the government authorities, of course, to put a stop to it. Which therefore comes to, yes, I like the fact that the Oyo State government appears proactive in trying to rush onto the scene and to give adequate information. But the government dropped the ball. The government certainly dropped the ball. Because when we had the deputy governor saying that, there was no, the police said that they were not involved. Which agency of government in Oyo State is responsible for emergency management and for crowd control? And that brings me to this sort of beautiful example that Lagos State sets, with Lasema, which, was one of the beautiful ideas that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he was governor, bequeathed, to his successors, as well as Raji Fashola, who eventually signed it into law, but it started while Asiwaju was there. You won't find, so when people say, why does the Lagos State government require you to sign an indemnity form with Lasema if you're having a show, whether open air or in a hall, is to forestall things like this. So I think that Oyo State government will need to learn one or two things going forward, so that you won't have people who may otherwise have good intentions, but then they do not have the capacity to execute it. And it therefore rests on government to ensure that we do not keep losing innocent lives, particularly when they are children, in this manner. The other important point will be that this also exposes our poverty level in Nigeria. How much were they going to collect from there? 5,000. The same 5,000 earlier this year in Bauchi that a wealthy man promised to give to people. And then stampede ensued in Bauchi. Scores died in the same manner. Move it back to Lagos, and Lagos, by the way, will probably be the richest, state in Nigeria. But to buy a half bag of rice for 10,000 naira in February of this year, that we lost 7 people, including a pregnant woman, and of course, a member of the ruling party who were desperate enough to want to, be beneficiaries of 10,000 naira bag of half a bag of rice, which of course, as at that time, was going to 40,000, 50,000 in the market. This exposes the fact that this is a poor nation. It shows that when we say we are dashing out money to the poor people, 8,000, 25,000 to 25 billion people, are we really doing that? Because you can't want to give 5,000 naira to 1,000 people and the community will not feel it. That I say large turnout here. So each time that you now say to Nigerians that, we have distributed, so and so amount, how? In which way, in which manner did you distribute it that we won't feel it? This is just 5,000 naira for 5,000 people. Maybe an additional 2,000 or 3,000 people, showed up in Ibadan for that 5,000 per family. But then we saw the stampede that ensued. So this is reality check to a number of people that, yes, people are struggling to stay afloat, to cope. We may sugarcoat our successes, we may emphasize our intentions, and they are good intentions are fine. But what people are dealing with at the moment is what keeps pushing them to these freebies, to these, urgent 2Ks and urgent 5Ks, including when it comes to scooping fuel from tankers and you recall the one in Jigawa, 163 people that lost their lives. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think that, I can gain 10,000 naira, 15,000 naira, 5,000 if I can get, a bucket of free fuel just to go and sell. So this is our reality, and it's a sad reality. And I hope that there are authorities who are looking and seeing that the death of these innocent people, these innocent kids in Ibadan, would not have happened if this were to be a decent, well-cultured, and not a poor society. That is our reality, sadly.
Definitely, and I just want to start off as well as just offering my condolences to, the parents of the children who lost their lives. So many dead, about 30 to 35, still waiting on those numbers, and so many who were injured. And I'll just touch on, one or two things regarding this particular story. For me, the tragedy in itself underscores the need for collaborative efforts in ensuring the safety and the well-being, of children, of people, when we have these kind of events. Like you rightfully said, I'm sure when the Queen wanted to put this into fruition, she was just thinking about how to, make the lives of these children, better, and just during the Christmas season, see how she can give back to society. However, one thing that she didn't do was looking for, was, how do I say it now? The planning and the execution of it seemed to be a bit haphazardly done. I mean, we're looking at those images now, even the images that had come out, the videos, when you could see the surge of the people that were there. There was no, when we have events in Lagos, you see, LASMA, they're directing the traffic. Yeah. You see police people there, in case there's any breakout. You see emergency services, the ambulances, but that didn't seem to be the situation. The planning, the execution strategy to ensure, the safety of the participants in this initiative was not well thought out. And for that reason, it's negligence, even though it's not something that she intended to do. The fact that she did not put all those plans in place is total negligence. And unfortunately, if a life is lost, and in this situation, if multiple lives are lost, then somebody needs to be held accountable. I was looking at the statement that the Oni of Ife put out, pledging his support for the victims' families. Yes, thank you for that. But really and truly, as a parent who must have lost their child, no amount of money or no amount of support is going to bring that child back. So at this point, we should be looking at preventative measures. Looking at the deputy governor of Oyo State saying that they were not aware that this was going to happen. I saw the picture, the photo that is now trending of one of the I think one of the media partners who seems to have collapsed when he found out that this was going on, and he's in the hospital now.
Why was that photo necessary?
Exactly. So when we start to look at things like this, we need to always remember who is at the receiving end, putting that picture out and showing that, okay, you are on an oxygen tank. What does that have to do with anything? Why weren't the appropriate measures put in place before this event happened? And to look at future events like this, because we are in the Christmas season, and because of our huge numbers, you were just talking about the fact that about 3 or 4 countries, the population of 3 or 4 countries is the total population of Nigerians. We know that we are by lots. 200 million people. It's not a small number, and we're going to continue to see events like this happening, especially during the Yuletide season. This is also a call to action for anybody, be it in Lagos State, or your state, Ogun State, in the north, in the east. If you are putting this kind of event together, let this be a lesson that you make sure you contact the appropriate authorities to make sure that we don't see this kind of situations happen again. We're supposed to be celebrating. This is supposed to be the happy holiday season, and now here we are mourning, our children. And again, I would just like to say condolences once more to the families who have lost their loved ones. But let's move on now to our next story. Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State has directed the immediate investigation and pardon on the case of a young man reportedly sentenced to death by hanging for stealing a fowl. Now, in a statement on Tuesday evening, the governor ordered the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice to intervene in the matter and ensure that the young man is listed for prerogative of mercy before the end of the year. The governor disclosed that he has directed the commissioner to initiate processes to grant the prerogative of mercy to the young man, while emphasizing that Osun is a land of justice and equity, and so fairness and protection of the sanctity of lives is important. He assured the public that the matter is receiving his direct attention. Wow, okay, so fowl theft. You know, it's mind-boggling when you think about it. When you think about the punishment and when you think about the crime and you think about the punishment, because in this situation, it almost seems as if that judgment of letting a man be hanged because he stole, a chicken, just seems like you're using a hammer to try to kill an ant. And I am very glad that the governor actually, looked at this prerogative for mercy to see how they can step it down. It doesn't make any sense to me, because we have people who are, and this is one of the things that, when we talk about, rehabilitation and the correctional facilities that we have in Nigeria, we have so many people that are behind bars, either waiting on bail or who have been given, sentences that don't match the crime. Why would you, in any case or in any scenario, I don't even understand how we went from someone stealing an item. I get it, maybe, wherever I stole it from, the person might be upset or, might have made plans for that, foul. This is we're living in a country that, of course, we have food insecurity. But how does that lead to a man being sentenced to hanging? It doesn't make any sense, and I'm glad that the governor has stepped into this. I can just imagine how he must have been feeling, knowing that he was set to lose his life at any minute. And back to what you said about, when we look at how people are hungry, this is a man that, for whatever reason, when he stole that chicken, I'm sure the only thing he was thinking about was how we can get home and kill that chicken and probably feed his family. He was thinking about how to put food on his table. This still speaks to the mindset of a lot of Nigerians who are living below the poverty line, who can't think past the next day, who are thinking about how to survive and just how to put to put food on their table. And I'm sure that he's not the only person who is behind bars now for for a crime that doesn't necessarily match the punishment. I'm grateful to the governor, and I wonder what your thoughts are about this story, Mr. Steve.
Well, my thoughts are very clear about this issue. I think that it will be unhelpful to jump into conclusions regarding the actual crime of the boy in question. He was a boy, a minor, when this happened, and has spent, I think about 10 years or thereabout, waiting to be killed. I get the import of what the governor is trying to do, but I think that the governor acted slightly hastily in the manner that it communicated, his intentions, and this is why that you have seen a few other people, including a former Attorney General of the state, Osun State, coming out to say that this case was not just about stealing a fowl or a chicken. It was a case of armed robbery in a consistent manner, and that the judge gave a ruling based on the information available to her as at that time. For me, the most cerebral intervention, the most helpful intervention on this matter that I've seen came, I think, about yesterday from Mr. Femi Falana on SAN, dissecting the thing to say that don't even reduce it to whether it was a fowl that was stolen or it's a case of armed robbery. Now, what is important is that the jurisdiction as at that time was misplaced, and that the judge didn't have, the right, shouldn't have dealt with, that matter, given the fact that this was a minor. And Mr. Falana also gave an example of a similar case that they handled at the twilight of the military in 1999, and which eventually, when democracy came, was given in favor of their client. A few young boys who were also minors as at that time. Okay, so maybe it makes sense, and I think Mr. Falana also acknowledges that it is in recognition of the fact that these were minors that the justice recommended to the governor to commute their sentencing, from a death by hanging to 10 years imprisonment. But unfortunately, we won't know what happened to the family of this boy. Maybe it's as a result of ignorance or poverty. They never pursued any of the options, and they just left, the young boy, all to his fate. at the Kirikiri maximum prison. And now that the matter has come to the attention of the governor, what is important is now to use that power that the governor has, to basically commute, that sentence formally. Yeah. And given the fact that he has already spent that time, 10 years, by any stretch of the imagination, the governor is within his right to grant him pardon. And I think that is what is essential. But then it will be, for law and jurisprudence, it will be important to put in perspective what actually happened. Regardless of what the governor will do, and we know what he intends to do. Regardless of that, it's important to know that maybe this was not just about stealing a fowl. It was a case of armed robbery that the justice illegally, in quotes, dealt with. What would therefore be important will be what happens to this young boy or gentleman when he comes out in terms of rehabilitation. If you were a thief, let's forget about what led you into armed robbery or thieving by the time you went in, and then you have become kind of hardened, inside. When you come out, is the society ready for you? Are you ready for the society? This is where rehabilitation will be very important. And I think that Osun State government, therefore, not just to grant him pardon, must be interested in the welfare of this young man when he comes out of prison. That will be my position.